Admittedly, I'm a little bummed. I just recorded this video. It was 20 minutes long, and it was beautiful, and it was perfect. And I recorded it using Photo Booth, and the file was null. So whatever that means, thanks, Apple. I'm making this video because there's something that I obviously want to talk about, and it's been 18 days maybe since I made the last video. I think to be a designer, obviously you're creating, so maybe more so to be a creative professionally, you have to consume professionally in order to create, right? In order to create, you must consume. There's so many facets and ways to consume. It's not just media, it's the way that you approach life is some form of consuming. But I think the more that you consume, it's not the more educated you are, but the more inspired you are through experience, through other people's creating, through like your own thoughts about what comes in, right? What comes in comes out, and there's however many inputs create incredible output. I think often we consume and we think about it as mostly an intentional action. Nowadays, I mean, the line is so blurred that we would call it, unintentional, because people just scroll and we binge. I mean, I binged a show last week, which I don't regret. It was a great show, The Day of the Jackal. I'd recommend it. I should go read the book, and I should go watch the original movie. It was just an awesome story. But that unintentional consumption isn't always a bad thing. Anything that comes in is good for the most part. It becomes our humor. It becomes our way of creating. It becomes our way of seeing life. And that being said, you should consume things that create positivity or benefit that isn't already there. You should not consume negativity. Not especially not if it's your only source of consumption. I think good consumption is thorough consumption. It's media agnostic. It's ideologically agnostic. It's theologically agnostic. It's consumption that helps you create the best thing. Is consuming everything, is consuming as much as possible. And obviously things are going to inspire you more than others. Obviously things are going to resonate more than others. I love music. Music is the thing that I think is my greatest inspiration. I was talking about it just before. Visually, I work in a way that resonates with sonics. It's so sound driven, whether I know it or not. It's often where I start. I often start with sounds, and when I do something, I find a sound that fits. I'm just creating in ways that are so influenced by the sound that comes in. Great examples of artists that I think are like sonically resonate with like my creative process. I said Sampha, Subtract, Untold, the whole kind of what's happening with Hemlock Recordings. I think that's incredible. And then there's musical scores that are very, very, atmospheric, environmental, and all of that. Definitely, that's what is going on in my brain. I feel like when I'm creating, that is what's going on in my brain. Recently, I discovered Corliss, who's also signed to, I think, Young with Sampha, with FK Twigs. So much great music there, and often I think people struggle with music where there's no lyrics. But I don't think you need lyrics to tell a story or evoke an emotion or create an atmosphere. There's so much to sound that just shapes like visual, that shapes imagination. We do understand intonation, we understand how people speak and how emotion comes out, but we do the same with sounds. We create connections. That's through a life of consuming. That's through a life of kind of more or less being told what things mean, but then we create our own connections. We form our own paths. We understand things in a way that's unique to us. And that's why I love music, because it is just like the basic structure, the basics of music is so emotive. It's so just like naturally storytelling. Sound tells so much story, often without, even being identifiably a word. I mean, words are sound, but I mean, words are this kind of cross section of like physical tactility, sight and sound, but it all stems from that ability to speak, to make sound, right? Even before you get so like caught up in such like a, I guess, high concept thing as speaking, the basics of sound, the basics of intonation are just, I think, the most powerful storytelling tool, and the most inspiring for me. But that's besides the point, because I don't think I'd be anywhere if I just consumed sound. If I wanted to be a better graphic designer, I think my head would first go to, I need to consume more design, or I need to consume more perspectives on design, or I need to consume more process on design. And all of that's true. I think kind of to master any craft, there is this stage of consumption of the essentials, consumption of the basics, but it isn't until you start consuming freely in more of a critical way that I think that's when the real like answers come to you. Is when you're kind of allowing yourself to think up the answers, right? That's kind of redundant, but to take a work, to take a sentence even about a work, and instead of like listening to someone's process, imagine the process, recreate the process mentally. That's where that next stage of growth happens. That's where I'd argue the important things happen, is when you take these things, either you like them or you don't, and you forget what the intention was, you forget what the purpose was, you forget what the actual process of getting to the end was, and you sit there and you think critically and you try and find those answers yourself. And that gives you just a better way of approach, a better way of your own approach, is when you can draw connections. I wouldn't say from nothing, but from less. When you can create stories from less, when you can understand stories from less, and you only get there by consuming professionally, which is kind of a funny thing to say. I mean, consuming is so stigmatized nowadays, endless consumption, endless scrolling, but I would stop with mindless consumption. I mean, I think we're all victim to it in one way or another, but intentional, it's not always intentional. Sometimes it's passive, but mindful, I guess, is a better word, because mindful accounts for some things being unintentional, but still maybe not productive, but productive is probably not the right word. Yes, productive, but there's a better word that would account for things that kind of are consumed passively but create benefit. Productive, beneficial, positive consumption. Positive consumption, sure. Negative consumption is probably not the best thing. And if you feel nothing, if you feel kind of numb from consumption, then I think then you have to tone down unintentional consumption. That's when you have to sit down and kind of be real and like tell yourself that the next thing that you consume is for a reason, is intentional, is not just you're not just caught up in that constant consumption, because that'll make you numb. And then when you're numb, you don't really receive what you take in. The input just kind of fizzles, and you got to read it again, you got to watch it again, you got to listen again. And that's a waste of time, admittedly. It's better when you do it right the first time. So don't consume so much that then it becomes meaningless. because it is such a valid and valuable task. Consumption is valuable, especially when it's mindful, especially when it's impactful, especially when it's broadening your horizons, challenging your thinking. And I think it's something that I need to hear, and I think it's something I need to hear frequently, which is why I'm recording this, so I can come back and I can watch it and I can hear it and I can think, have I been listening to my own advice? If yes, awesome. If no, it's kind of a wake-up call. It's a way for me to speak to myself from the past and tell myself what I should be doing, because it's easy to get off track. It really is. So that's my main directive for talking about that today. And I know that it's a lot of kind of rambling and talking in circles, but hopefully it makes enough sense. I think I'm going to go over a number of songs that recently I was like, this is awesome. New Sam G album, for those who are about that. He's one of my favorite artists. I think, because you can watch his entire growth from being 13 onwards on SoundCloud, and just the way that he's developed as a musician, and he's an incredible producer. It definitely kind of exploring with this 80s synth pop sound now, but it's got this really mature 21st century edge to it. And you can hear how he got there. You can hear how he went from his kind of experimental production, which I think is after he starts in this housey area, and then it becomes this what it is today, which is beautiful. The only feature is a Tori Moi feature. I love Tori Moi, another great inspiring person, just kind of involved in so many mediums, a creator. That's what I love about people who just create, and they don't care. They just kind of create, and they have fun, and they get serious, and then they just shock you. They're both great examples, but some other great music lately. I mentioned it, I think, earlier. Coreless. I heard Joy Squad, and a few years back when I was watching an FK Twigs performance at a Valentino, the Paris Fashion Week show for the whatever Valentino was there, whatever was coming, right? Crazy song, and I finally pinned it down. Kind of then went down a brief Coreless rabbit hole with the 40 single, which has a nice A side, a nice B side. Both tracks are good. And then there's also Short Stories, which is Coreless and Sampha, On the Way, Let It Go. Both incredible pieces of production. Rapture by Blondie. I heard it recently, and it reminded me of songs that I've heard it sampled in. And sampling's another great thing. Another great way of kind of expressing your love for consumption, recreating things or re-honoring things, or just being inspired and showing that inspiration somewhere. I think sampling's great. I think referencing is great. Obviously it's best when you provide value, but most of the time, a sample in a song is providing value, because it's not the whole song again. And even covers are incredible ways of showing your appreciation and providing new value. There's no way to do a song the same way that the other person did it. There's definitely some things that are riding that line, but besides the point. Kind of re-listening to, I've mentioned Sampha multiple times, just kind of going back down that rabbit hole, re-listening to Lahai, and then Sampha, Subtract. I've just been on a kick lately. The real icing on top, 2 songs. Number 1, a song I was introduced to 2 years back. I think just an incredible music video. I don't know, there's just so much happening, and I feel like it takes so many different music video formulas, and then it mashes it into one in this way that is just kind of crazy. But there's 3 minutes of just raw instrumental. I need to look into the lyrics further, but Tic Tac Tuck by Silica Gel featuring Soyeon. It's just an awesome song. It is so awesome. in terms of sound. It is so awesome in terms of thought and creatively. Like watching that music video is whether it's the expressions on the singer's face and how kind of disconnected it is, but how emotive he still is, and just kind of how aloof the whole like band sections are. And then you have these crazy like puppet visuals and then these flashbacks, and it's beautiful. Anyways, just had to mention that. And then I discovered this morning. I think it's coming. The album is coming, but it's the first single off the album. I've never heard of the artist, but this song was incredible when I heard it this morning. I've listened to it multiple times already today. I'm a real on repeat person. Puma Blues Desire, which is off coming album Croak Dream, which is coming in February. Really cool music video as well. Just kind of like a tasteful color palette, deep blue. There's definitely going to be some sort of, I think, story there in a way the album cover kind of shares the grain, the tone. I think it also visually is very much captures the essence of the song, I'd say. So, big mouthful of words. I'd say just to reiterate, what do I know? But you can't create professionally without consuming professionally. Period.